One of the basic skills that you must acquire in computer systems servicing is to independently assemble and disassemble a personal computer or simply setting up a PC. Before starting computer disassembly, make sure you have the tools you need and they're all close by and handy, and be sure to have a container to keep the screws in so you have them when you want to put things back together. Step 1. Unplugging. The first thing you do is to unplug every cable that is plugged into your computer. That includes the cables such as power, USB, mouse, keyboard, internet, Ethernet, modem, AM, FM antenna, cable TV, etc. Just unplug all the cables for safety purposes. Now that your computer is fully unplugged, move your PC to a clean workspace.
Step 2. Opening the outer shell case first, unscrew the 4 screws at the back of the computer. On most computer cases, there will be large knobs that you can unscrew by hand or by screwdriver on the back right side of the computer. The left side has small screws because on that side you can't access much on the inside. Once the screws are removed, you can remove the side panels. On most computers, they just slide off. Start with the left side panel, the side that once had the knobs, slide it towards the back of the computer. Now you can remove the left panel. Just like the other side, slide it towards the back of the computer. Removing the system fan first, unplug the fan from the motherboard. You can find the plug by following the wire from the fan. It should be labeled sysfan 1. Next, you will have to unscrew the fan from the outside. You should now be able to lift the fan out of the PC. Removing the CPU fan. The CPU fan is located right on top of the CPU heatsink, which is a large piece of metal with fins on the top. The CPU fan plugs into the motherboard in an awkward place that is hard to access. But just follow the wires and you should easily find it. It is labeled CPU fan 1. To remove the fan from the heatsink, remove the 4 screws securing it in place.
Power supply. The first thing to do is unplug every wire coming from the power supply. You must disconnect the motherboard very large connector plug, CD/DVD drive power, internal hard drive power and portable hard drive slot power. Once is unplugged, unscrew the 4 screws holding the power supply in place, on the back of the computer. Next, push the power supply from the outside, and then lift it out. Step 6. CD/DVD drive first, unplug the ribbon from the back of the drive. Once that is completed, pull on the tab securing the drive in place, then push it out from the inside. Step 7. Hard drive first, unplug the connector at the back of the slot, and unplug the other end from the motherboard. Also unplug the SATA cable from the motherboard and the hard drive. To remove the hard drive from the side of the slot, unscrew the 4 screws securing it in place. You must be very careful not to drop the hard drive, since it is very delicate. Step 8. Memory, RAM. To remove the RAM, push down on both tabs holding the RAM in place, which are located at both ends of the RAM. Step 9. Motherboard. The motherboard has 7 screws holding it to the frame, which are indicated by large white circles around them. Remove them and then lift the motherboard out of the frame. Now that you have the skills in disassembling a personal computer, I believe that you are ready to take another step of this video, which is assembling a personal computer. All you need to do is to follow the step-by-step procedures provided in this video. 1. Take inventory. Before you start, take an inventory of your parts. Do not begin assembling your computer if you don't have everything you need. Begin the step-by-step process once you are ready with everything you need. 2. Make space. Make time. Building a PC takes up space, about a dining room table worth. So make sure you have plenty of working room and a few hours to proceed with minimal interruption. Work on a flat, stable surface, or bare floor, where you have room to lay out all of the items. 3. Prepare grounding protection. Use an inexpensive anti-static wrist strap. Make sure you are wearing your anti-static wrist strap correctly. It does you no good at all if you do not wear it, and you are ready to proceed. Look at figure 43 for details. Great care should be taken when installing the motherboard. First, take the board out of its packaging and put it on top of the anti-static bag it came in. Remember, you always want to safeguard your components from potentially hazardous static electricity. Wear your strap. Use the unlocking mechanism to open the CPU socket, which is usually a lever. Carefully line up the pins and place the chip in its socket. It will fit only when oriented the proper way. An arrow or a missing pin on one corner of the chip will show you how to line things up. Align triangular CPU and socket key marks. Lower the lever to lock the CPU into place. Step 5. Install memory. Follow the manufacturer's directions to install the heatsink and the fan that will cool the processor. If you bought an OEM CPU and a separate heatsink, you may need to spread a thin layer of the thermal grease that came with the heatsink over the chip to ensure proper transfer of heat. Some heatsinks come with this grease already applied. In order to install the memory modules, insert them into the proper sockets and push down firmly but evenly until the clips on both sides of the socket pop into place. If your motherboard supports dual-channel memory, consult the user manual to determine which pairs of RAM sockets you should use. The motherboard and the CPU are the brain and nerve center of your PC, so selecting these components is the most important decision you'll make. Carefully position the motherboard on top of the brass standoffs, line up all the holes and use the screws that accompanied the case to fasten down the motherboard. Step 7. Connect the power supply. Making the proper connections is crucial to successfully assembling your PC system. Fortunately, manufacturers provide color-coded power cables and unique connector shapes to make the job easy. First, plug the large ATX power connector from your power supply into the matching port on your motherboard. To locate the smaller, square processor power connector, you cannot miss it. It is the one sprouting the yellow and black wires, and attach it to the motherboard. Note, your connector is usually located near the processor. As always, refer to your motherboard's manual for the exact locations. 3. Use your motherboard user manual and find the description about front panel connectors. Attach each of the tiny leads from the power and reset switches, the hard disk activity lights, the PC speaker, and any front panel USB and FireWire ports to the corresponding pin on your motherboard. The needle nose pliers are useful for manipulating small pieces. Step 8. Install internal drive. Use the included screws to attach your drives to the rails or cage and slide them into the case. For externally accessible drives such as a DVD recorder, you can save time by installing one drive rail and sliding the drive in for a test fitting to make sure that its front is flush with the case. When the drives are installed, connect power and data cables to each one. Parallel ATA drives use wide, flat data cables that can be installed only in the correct way. Floppy drives use a similar but smaller cable. SATA drives use a thin, 1 cm wide data cable. SATA drives use a new type of power connector that many power supplies don't come with. Fortunately, many motherboards ship with adapters for converting a standard 4-pin power connector to a SATA power connector. Step 10. Install the add-in cards. For each add-in card, you must choose a free PCI slot. Remove its backplane cover to allow access from the rear of the case. Carefully position the card above the slot and press down firmly to seat the card. Secure the card with a screw. Steps in connecting peripherals of a PC. Step 1. Attach the monitor cable to the video port. Step 2. Secure the cable by tightening the screws on the connector. Step 3. Plug the keyboard cable into the PS/2 keyboard port. Step 4. Plug the mouse cable into the PS/2 mouse port. Step 5. Plug the USB cable into a USB port. Step 6. Plug the network cable into the network port. Step 7. Plug the power cable into the power supply.